Hi guys, so I have created an instructional plein air video on Yavapai Vista Point. It's this big, beautiful slick rock platform that has just these incredible uh, views of the surrounding red rock, sandstone, cliff formations, rolling hills, big beautiful sky. But it is windy and you're kind of exposed up here, and I'm not usually a vista painter. I've done a lot, obviously, vistas, rim of the Grand Canyon, but I got a little complacent, and for the first time probably in the whole 8 years that I've been plein air painting, my easel fell all the way over. And it was a complete disaster. As someone who paints to care for the land, promote protection for Mother Earth, and who, at the very worst, tries to create no harm, at the very best, tries to offer healing and restoration, movements to inspire reverence and leave no trace, all of those things. So my heart was really broken with this little disaster, and it, made me realize how careful that I am, because it hasn't happened quite that badly ever before. And it was a powerful learning experience for me, because I am an advocate for the environment. My studio practice is very safe. I've taken great efforts to make it that way. But even if you spilled your food all over the rocks or anything that left a mark, it's heartbreaking. If you have a bag of trash, and it blows off into the wind off a cliff, those are things that break our hearts, and they do happen. And there's ways to be responsible out in nature. So I did create a little list of things that you always want to make sure you do when you're out painting in nature, especially in the wilderness. And if you're just on the side of the road or a parking lot, which I paint in those spots too, just to not encroach on the wild spaces. But if you are painting in the environment and the landscape, anywhere really, you just want to leave no trace and be mindful of honoring where you are and being super careful and mindful. And these practices have served me well. If I had done everything that I normally do, it wouldn't have happened. So the first thing that I want to say is you just want to lay out a blanket or a drop cloth and then set up on there. Once you've got that down, you really want to make sure that you stabilize your easel with something to weight it down in the middle, and then the corners if you can. And it's best to take weights of some kind with you, maybe your whole gallon of solvent, maybe heavy tubes of paint, maybe your water bottle that's full of water, and just try to avoid taking the rocks or branches around you and using that to stabilize. Next thing you want to do is you always want to have your mediums covered unless you're actively using them. You want to kind of press down the paints in your palette box so that if it does flip over, all the paint doesn't get all over the place. It sticks to the paint in the palette box. Another thing is you really don't want to go off trail as much as possible, especially in the high desert when there's this cryptobiotic soil and these really sensitive areas here that take many years to build up moisture retention. You definitely don't want to trample on plants and grasses and things like that. So you want to set up ideally in a spot that's as close to the trail as possible. I really like to have an intention in mind. I practice gratitude, and I make an internal offering, sometimes an external offering if possible. I really make sure to do a little bit of a walking meditation, a very short seated meditation, even just very mindful steps and breathing up until the act of painting. And I hope that you've gleaned a little bit from this video, because plein air can be very overwhelming and a little intense, and you have so many things to wrap your mind around, and then you're battling the elements, the forces of nature, not battling them, but you're riding these so-called waves of the weather, of you know all of the situations you find yourself in, a lot of times maybe even the backcountry. So just like a hiker, like a mountaineer, like a climber, you have to really come prepared. I've gleaned these little tips on how to perfect my practice in nature over many years, so I hope that maybe one of these points that I've shared with you today is something that you can put in your own toolbox. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and happy full moon. See you next time. All right, so you can see I've got titanium white, yellow ochre, cad, yellow medium, and lemon, alizarin crimson, cad, medium and light, ultramarine blue, and cerulean blue. And now we're just going to dive right into the painting. And as you can see, that light is not going to last, and I'm not sure if this is going to stick around or if it's completely fleeting. So you can see I'm super quickly just staining my 9x12 horizontal panel with kind of a dirty orange wash. And just like rapid fire, I'm laying in this sketch. You can see in the background how the light is coming in and out of these huge monsoon clouds. Because the rocks are so lit and so orange, I'm going to move right into what the clouds are looking like, because it's providing such an awesome sense of contrast. And the sky is also something that can be very fleeting. So now that I've got my red rock sketch in, I'm just going to block in the main masses of that lower cloud. And then you can see I ended up wiping down my alizarin crimson sketch, and that kind of helped me to redefine that shape a little in a very quick way. Obviously, you want to just train your brain as much as possible to not get hung up on the details when you're in a fleeting light situation like this. You can tell that I am trying to get in those shadows because there's not many of them, and that's going to be really important in how this rock feature in light reads. So carefully kind of going around the contour of this rock and redefining my sketch a little bit more, and just where my darkest darks are on that rock face. You can see that I've got the mother color of the rock, which is basically like, a red that's got some ultramarine blue and a little bit of my cad yellow mixed in there. And I'm trying to be a little bit precise in the drawing because the blocks of color are so strong that the design is going to be really important. And I'm trying to make sure that when I place these lines for the different sections of the rock that I don't have any real repeating patterns. So I'm trying to create variety in my marks and in the shapes that are there and appearing. So I don't want a lot of lines, spaced out evenly or that sort of thing. Super quick, you can see how just like this shadow of the landscape is kind of creeping up to the base of Bell Rock. And I'm getting that green in, that dark green, and very quickly putting in where the green highlights are, or the lighter greens. So, I've got my shadow green, which is like an ultramarine with cadmium red medium and some cad medium yellow. Now I'm taking a little bit of that mixture and mixing a lot more blue in, and a little bit of titanium white for that distant mountain that just totally went into shadow. You can see that the hillside on the right is kind of all lit up, but it's a little too much matching the foreground green, so I'm going to continue to tweak that a little as I go. And really quickly, I'm adding a lot of titanium white and cad lemon yellow to my red mixture so that I can attempt to capture that really bleached out looking sandstone against the darker sky. And you can see just how much that light is kind of fading in and out. Very quickly, that shadow is going to start to creep up on the rock face, and I'm not interested in chasing that. I'm interested in kind of just getting that light pattern that I first saw when I set up. Kind of fading a little now, and I'm maintaining the integrity of that super light color on the rocks. You can see when it gets to the top of the bell shape, there is a little bit more of like a middle tone, reddish orange. And now I'm just continuing to kind of shape the top of this feature of Bell Rock and model those forms a little bit, kind of integrate those shadows, and getting my color gradient in there, so my dark, middle, and light, to create that illusion of three-dimensional form. So I'm gonna kind of drag my middle tone into my very lightly painted light that I just put down, and reestablishing again some of those shadow areas. And when you're modeling form, there's a lot of this kind of push and pull to get it to feel rounded. You can put like a little more saturated middle tone next to the darker shadows to really give it that look of, curvature. And I'm reestablishing where these tiers of the rock are, and that also helps to give it the illusion of depth, since the color of this sandstone is pretty uniform. So now I'm going to be going back into the sky, and you can see that it's changed a little since I first created those shapes that were really interesting to me. So I'm going to kind of try to maintain that strong diagonal in that space between the cloud layers. So this is the sky that's kind of peeking through those big dark monsoon clouds, and I think that adds a lot of light and interest to the piece. So I've mixed a cerulean blue with titanium white, and I've blocked that in. Now I'm just kind of lightening this gray tone. Usually the colors are a little bit more saturated in my cloud masses, but right now I'm just kind of focusing on the value and temperature of them and going for a little less chroma. And I may, later go back with a little boost of that, but right now you can see that the clouds that are closer to the horizon are a little less dark, and they're a little bit cooler. The big mass overhead that I'm working into now has a little bit warmer feeling, a little more contrast. And I'm kind of just modeling the base of this cloud, so getting some dark in there. Maintaining the value structure of the clouds is so important because really this is the lightest part of your painting. But in this particular scene, they are kind of darker than a lot of these foreground shapes. So that's something interesting to play with. And modeling the clouds here by placing in my lighter highlights towards the top, and then finding that middle mixture and, unifying the darks and the lights. I'll go back into that a little more and refine. But there's some highlights too on these clouds that are lower to the horizon. So trying to get those in. And those are going to be refined a little bit further too. I feel like you can never add too much white in your sky. And that really helps to unify the shapes and push them back because they are a big part of the painting, but they're not the focus of the painting. So obviously Bell Rock is the focus, and the clouds are just kind of pointing to it and adding that necessary contrast and drama. So you can see compositionally too how I've created the focus in my painting through the way that I've organized these big main masses. And now you can see that I've gone back into my turquoise sky color and dropped in a little bit more of those clouds to kind of just break up that mass a little bit. And now that that paint on Bell Rock has set a tiny bit, I am able to go in and just drop a little bit more of those middle tones. For better or for worse, the very strong light is no longer hitting that feature. So I'm modeling it a bit more based on how it's looking now and not how it was looking when I first set up. And I actually think that that will help the painting, because sometimes when you just have this big one mass of color, it can feel a little flat. So, thinking, how can I communicate that sun just really lighting up the rock? So now a couple of final things include just refining this foreground that I really quickly just laid in because of the way that the light was changing and the way that the shadow was just quickly advancing. So you can see that I've dropped in this wonderful highlight where there's kind of a clearing of these trees, and that's a really bright green. So I've taken my green mixture with the ultramarine blue and cad red and cad yellow, and I've added a good amount of titanium white to it and just placed in that streak. And then to set it in to that foreground, I've gone back and I've modeled some of those darker trees coming up in front of it, and then also the more middle tone trees behind it. Now I'm going back into this distant hillside and getting it to be much darker, but still adding a little bit of a highlight there. And finally, after taking a step back, I was able to see that I needed to correct the drawing of Belle just a little bit. So I added in kind of that slanting rock at the top. And now it's complete. Some additional edits that I could make to this piece include highlighting that rock face a bit more with a lighter red rock value, and also adding in a little more saturation to the clouds. If you have a plein air journal and sketchbook, you can quickly jot these ideas down on site. And that concludes today's very exciting plein air full moon adventure.